Play world.
Yeah. My hitters be moving and shaking and stay out the streets. Yeah. Your hitters be hating, your hitters be looking so weak. Yeah. My hitters be moving and shaking and stay out the streets. Yeah. Your hitters be hating, your hitters be looking so. Snuff the shooter, snuff the looter, snuff the booster, snuff the money mover. Snuff the hater, snuff the player, snuff your hairline, tape up and shape up. Snuff the shooter.
Welcome to Hail to the Culture. We are back after our first preseason game. We finally got some action here, so we got a lot to talk about. It's your boy Rome. As always, I'm here with my man Bryce.
What up? What up?
Man, so how are your thoughts about that first preseason game, man? There's a lot of positives, a lot of negatives. Obviously, we lost the game 30-10, but as we all know, preseasons isn't necessarily about wins and losses, but more about how you perform. So what did you think about the overall performance from the team?
Yeah, it's definitely tough to get a gauge because a lot of our key guys were not playing in the game. Seemed like they were willing to scale it back to see what some of the younger guys had. And in doing so, you saw a lot of inexperience. You saw a lot of missteps, a lot of mistakes. But there were, in my opinion, enough positives to be able to take away from that game. It wasn't all negative. But the lack of preparation was evident. It was clear that we didn't game plan for the Browns. And, so I guess my biggest takeaway is that there were some positives, but it was clear that the Redskins didn't really game plan for the Browns, and they kind of just more or less wanted to see what they had from what they sent on the field seemed very raw to me. You know, it wasn't super coached up. It was kind of just let's see what we got, and put guys in regular, normal situations and see how they perform.
Yeah, that first preseason game is very much like a scrimmage where it's just like, okay, we're going to line up, call our basic plays. It's either going to be positive or negative, and then we kind of see how guys react off that. Like, how do you perform when you get put in a 3rd and 13 or a 2nd and short? You know what I mean? The different scenarios that come up in live games. So I agree with you on that. And I think if you're looking at it from that standpoint and not the Browns came out and scored 30 and we only scored 10 kind of thing, then I think it was definitely a positive for the Redskins. So let's go ahead and jump into it, man. As always, we start with the state of the franchise, state of the culture. So we got to talk about Haskins, man. We got to talk about our dog and his preseason debut. So he came in and ran, I believe it was with the 2s, even though, there was no starters, so it might have even been some 3s. But what did you take away from Haskins' performance, man, considering that he wasn't going up against, he was going up against backups and whatnot. But what did you think about his overall performance?
Well, I mean, as all of our regular listeners know, I'm in the boat of start Haskins week 1. And I think that performance, let's put it like this. I'm going to walk it through the beginning. When he first entered the game and they ran that bootleg action and he hit and he made that pass, I want to say it was to Kidsey off the bootleg, and it was just a beautiful run play. And I was just so hyped, man. I was so hyped. Maybe it was Robert Davis that caught that ball. I don't know. But I was hyped, man, and I was like, this is what I expected to see. This is the live arm. This is. It was very promising. And then, the performance went downhill a little bit from there. A couple takeaways that I got. One, obviously, Haskins is not ready to start week 1, but it doesn't mean that more preseason action couldn't get him ready. The second takeaway I got was his athleticism. All offseason we've heard how Dwayne Haskins isn't athletic, how he's slow, how he's slew-footed, but I did not see that at all in the preseason game 1. It was clear to me that this guy is sneaky athletic. This guy can make plays in the pocket. That one play, he almost zipped a touchdown to Cam Sims in the corner of the end zone. It looked like Sims even got his hands on it. Maybe should have came up with it. But that escaping the pocket the way he did on that play is just a taste of what we might have with Haskins, something we haven't had in a long, long time, that ability to escape. Well, Colt McCoy has it a little bit, but the way Haskins did it just looked different. And after the performance, like I said, there were mistakes. The picks, obviously, but those picks, both of those picks, in my opinion, were just results of just a young guy moving a little too fast. Not going through all of his keys before he makes a pass. And that's something that he's going to have to learn. Those are just growing pains. Overall, I hate to say this because a lot of people are going to think I'm crazy, but I was still impressed. And I still feel like I saw enough that I'm still in the start Haskins week 1 camp. How about you?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I'm not leaving my boat, man. I'm staying firm on this boat, man. Haskins for week 1. If you
I thought for sure you would have changed your mind a little bit on that, but for me, Haskins performed exactly how I expected. He looked how he looked in training camp. Most of the reports, and we were down there as well, so we saw it firsthand. But if you guys were following along, Haskins had days where he looked amazing. He had moments where you could tell he's the most talented arm on the team. But then he also had, as Kevin O'Connell refers to them, brain farts, where he would overthrow it or throw it into triple coverage. Like that pick 6 on the wheel route, he threw the ball a little bit too soon, kind of just tried to loft it over the linebacker's head. And that's what 1 year of college experience really gets you, Like the Browns, it might have been the Browns' backups, but the Browns' backups are probably better than some random school that you're playing where the guys aren't going to play professional football. They're going to go be a dentist or a doctor. So he has to realize that he's playing elite-level competition regardless of, it's the NFL level, it's pro level. These guys are trying to feed their family, so you can't – there's not going to be any easy passes. You got to take every throw extremely serious. But, yeah, and I think the reason I'm surprised you're still on the start him week 1 thing is because, for me, this confirmed why I don't want to start him week 1. Because if you look at our schedule, just a reminder here, the first 5 games we go to Philadelphia, then we're at home against Dallas, at home against the Bears, on the road against the Giants, and then at home against the Patriots. Those are some pretty tough defenses. And I agree with you. I heard you when you said, Haskins is going to see a little bit more action and he might still be able to get ready here before week 1. But if he looked anything how he looked against the Browns' backups, then I definitely don't want to see him going up against Philly's defense on the road, the Bears' defense, or a defensive-minded coach like Bill Belichick, because that could scar a rookie quarterback for his entire career. But, like you said, we got more to see, so I'm not totally off the start him week 1 thing, but I'm definitely leaning towards let Keenum go through this little gauntlet of top 5 defenses that we're going to see.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I guess another reason why I'm still in the camp of start Haskins, I don't think that the plays they gave him were super vanilla. Now, don't get me wrong, the bootleg, that was a simple read. That's a 1-2 read, boom, boom, hit one of the guys, hit who's ever open out of 2 guys. But the rest of the plays, man, it seemed like they kind of gave him the exact same playbook that they gave Keenum, right? And, if you think back to 2012 when we had RG at the helm, the Shanahans made that offense catered to RG3. And I just feel like if you do that same thing for Haskins starting week 1, I saw enough there that I could say, okay, we cater the offense to this guy. This could be something. Hey, and one more thing I want to add in, man. What do you think about those read options, man? Haskins was picking up 10 to 15 every time he pulled that ball down. That was kind of impressive.
Oh, yeah. That was probably one of the most impressive things was how he used his legs. Because a lot of people acted I think nowadays people think if you're not Kyler Murray, you're not RG3 type, that if you're not running, then you're not mobile. But, I mean, Haskins reminds me a lot of Alex Smith. Alex Smith isn't necessarily a runner, but he can move. And I think Haskins is exactly like that. You know what I mean? He's not a statue and that's a good thing because that's actually a good transition because we had a couple O-line issues. And I know Sheriff and Moses weren't out there. I don't think Roulier was out there either. So it was mostly backups. But Eric Flowers is out here trying to be a starter. And he didn't look too hot in that game, man. I think he had a holding call within the first 3 plays. So what are you thinking about this offensive line? Because that's definitely going to affect who starts at quarterback.
Well, I'm gonna be honest, man.
Or who should start at quarterback? Because if our offensive line is gonna be looking how it looked, then I definitely don't want to see Haskins getting demolished by these top defensive linemen.
Yeah, and I hear that, man. I think Flowers got a rough break, man, because I know that first hold they called on him, that was not a hold. He was inside of this dude's shoulder pads and literally rolled this dude all the way down the field, and it was just a call to hold because the fact that he was holding the inside of the shoulder pads. But that's completely legal. If you get inside somebody's chest, you can grab on and push them back. And so that's literally the sled. That's literally the sled exercise. It's wow, man. He did a sled drill to a guy and got called a penalty for it. So that was a tough break for him. But Flowers I wasn't super impressed. I did think he fared a little better than I expected. Penn snaps at left tackle, I was very impressed with when I went back and watched the tape. He was riding guys right out of the play. He's not explosive. I mean, it doesn't look like Trent. It doesn't look like what Trent does, but it's still effective. He knows how to slide his feet and stay in front of guys. I was pretty impressed with Wes Martin, I'll be honest, man. When Martin got in there, he had some pretty good reps. Now, there were times where he looked like a rookie, but I definitely liked what I saw. I like the potential I see in Martin. But overall, like you said, man, that was a makeshift O-line. That cannot be the O-line that we go with, come week one. Like you said, 3 of our top dogs, Sheriff, Roulier, Morgan Moses, not in the game. And, guys like, Timon Paris, and the guy we drafted from Alabama, Pershbacher. Like, these guys, they're not even, backup quality as of yet. So it's really tough to kind of grade everything going on around them when you've got guys coming free from the O-line. I mean, I remember Dwayne Haskins in this post-game interview, he said on the one sack that he had when the guys came right up the middle, it was a max protection. So that's kind of ridiculous that on the max protection, you guys are might coming right up the middle. So, it's definitely far from a finished product on that offensive line. So I wouldn't take too much away from the performance, especially when you consider that, we're missing a Pro Bowler in Brandon Sheriff, a fringe Pro Bowler in Morgan Moses, and then, of course, Trent Williams wasn't there. Donald Penn was just rotating in. So, it's not what our finished product is going to be. And then one more guy I got to talk about is Jerron Christian. I wasn't overly impressed with Jerron. I expected a lot in this first preseason game for him, but he is coming off injury, so it might take him a little minute to get back in the full speed and get in the swing of things. But I wasn't super impressed with the offensive line. But like we both know, it's far from a finished product, and we're missing 4 if you count Trent, of our top guns on that offensive line.
Yeah, my biggest takeaway from the offensive line is, like you just said, we're missing 4 of our 5 starters. The left guard position has been a question, but it's going to be depth. All Redskin fans know the past 2-3 seasons, like, the offensive line has been riddled with injuries, and if Moses goes down, the Sheriff goes down, or, God forbid, but if anyone gets hurt for any reason, and these are the guys that we're looking at to step in, then we might have some issues. But let's circle back real quick. Let's talk about Keenum and McCoy, because we talked a lot about Haskins. But let's talk. We said who we think should start. As you guys know, Bryce is very bullish on starting Haskins week 1. I'm leaning a little bit towards Keenum, or at least I was. After seeing him in the first preseason game, I wasn't as impressed with him as I wanted to be. Now, I'm not big on Keenum. I don't think he, by any means, is the future of the team. But I was hoping that he would be, like a spot starter and could maybe get us through these first 5 games with 2, maybe even 3 wins if he played well enough. But he didn't look that great to me in this preseason game, and now I'm starting to kind of see why Coach Gruden had that unofficial depth chart with McCoy at number 1. So before, I was thinking McCoy doesn't really have a shot. But how do you feel now after the depth chart came out and seeing both Haskins and Keenum perform in week 1? Do you think McCoy has a little bit more of a chance than people are giving him?
Oh, definitely, man. Like, just watching Jay Gruden. I kind of wrote him off. Yeah, a lot of people have. And watching Jay Gruden as closely as we have over these past couple seasons, it's almost like we know all of his guys, Like, Ryan Grant was one of his guys, and Colt McCoy is another one of Gruden's guys, you know what I mean? He's a Gruden grinder. Let's go ahead and call him one of those. Like, Gruden loves Jay Gruden loves Colt McCoy. He probably sees a lot of himself in Colt, a guy who's relentless in his pursuit to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. And I mean, Keenum, and I noted this on the Twitter page at HTTR Culture. Keenum was super, super late with everything except the deep ball. So what that showed me is Keenum still got to get comfortable with his offense. When he knows the deep ball is coming, he'll drop back and hit it on his back foot, and boom, you know what I mean? He'll get to his he'll do it right when it's a deep ball. But when it was the normal progressions, and he had to check his keys and go from his first read to his second read to his third read, he was super rushed, and then it was causing him to be late because he was rushing through the reads before guys were actually breaking off of their routes. And it just seemed like he was late on everything except the deep ball. But now you can look at this 2 ways. You can look at it from the standpoint of, okay, Jay Gruden must want Colt to start because Colt didn't even play in the first game. Or you can look at it like this. Jay Gruden knows that Keenum does not know his offense that well yet, and he understands that Keenum needs the reps in the offense to catch up to speed to be ready for week 1. So what his real mindset is, you can't really know just yet, but if I had to put money on it, I would definitely say the Gruden grinder, Colt McCoy, is going to make his way onto the field come week 1.
Yeah, I think around minicamp I had McCoy at like a 5% chance of starting. I'm gonna have to change that around. He's probably got about 60 to 70% chance the way I'm looking at it now. But I agree with you though, because if they are thinking Keenum, then they probably do feel like he needs more reps to get more comfortable in the offense. But something that's interesting to think about also in the future, if it is gonna be McCoy, does that put Keenum on the trade block? You know, Keenum might become an expense at that point. You know, we might not need to keep him because Gruden is pretty famous for only keeping two quarterbacks, and we are going to have Smith technically on the roster, albeit injured reserve. So there's a lot of quarterback spots being taken up, or a lot of spots being taken up by quarterbacks here. But let's keep it moving because we'll keep that conversation for another day because that is a very real possibility that Keenum could become trade bait. But let's talk about the defense for a little bit, man. So none of the starters really played. But that's all fine because I think that there was a starter out there that might not be a starter on the depth chart today, but come season's end, I think this guy will be our starting slot corner, and it's more than obvious who I'm talking about, Jimmy Moreland. That man was obviously the player of the game. What were your thoughts on how well he performed?
Oh, man, Jimmy is a dog, man. I mean, he changed an entire series on his own. Well, I think that might have been the third Browns possession. They got down to around the end zone, and Jimmy Moreland went pass, break up, forced fumble to give us the ball back, 3 plays consecutively. And, you know, that's the thing. That's what we saw in training camp, and that's what everybody was raving about in training camp, even the veterans, Norman, Collins, really high on Moreland. And it's clear to see why. The dude plays with a certain fire that you just can't teach. I mean, he's not – and one thing he proved to me, he's a small guy, but he's not afraid to put his head in there. I mean, the forced fumble, the first forced fumble, because he had 2, the first forced fumble that he caused, I mean, he went head up. When I say head up, he went head up with that running back. Found the ball with his face mask like they teach you in Little League, and put his face mask on the ball, and the ball popped right out. And that's when I said, okay, this guy has a little edge to him. And in the conference after the game, post game, he said, like, you know, although I'm a small guy, I think of myself as more of like a honey badger type. Well, I'm small, but I'm never afraid to go hit somebody or to take a hit. And I think that is the most impressive thing, because it's one thing to go hit somebody, but when you're that small, you have to be prepared to take that hit too, because there's impact. You know, it's impact coming your way. And Jimmy Moreland's got that dog in him, man. He's got that dog in him that you just can't teach. And hey, man, I love to see it. I really did. I know you've got a lot to say about Moreland, man, because that's been your guy from the beginning.
Yeah, man. I used to play DB, man, and I know all about being the smaller guy on the field, but still being a ball hawk, man. Like, Jimmy Moreland is like a hero to me, man. Like, I definitely can see him taking either Monroe's spot or possibly even Dunbar on the trajectory that he's on. I know he wasn't covering OBJ or Jarvis Landry or anything like that, but just to have a nose for the ball like that, that is impressive, especially for a guy who's coming out of JMU, didn't play top competition in college. To come out here in that first preseason game and play the way he played is extremely impressive. And you hit the nail or you hit the hammer with the nail, or the nail with the hammer when you said talked about his tackling, because that was the only question mark. Right. He's a smaller dude. How's he going to be once he gets in with pads and he's playing with big dudes in the NFL? And he proved that he does not give a damn how big you are. He's willing to stick his head in there and make plays, and that is exactly what he did. And I don't see him doing anything different for the whole season. So, yeah, I mean, he's definitely getting my game ball for preseason week 1. We probably don't, you know, we're not going to do all that for the preseason games, but Jimmy Moreland definitely MVP of that game.
Yeah, no doubt, man, no doubt. Jimmy Moreland proved himself, man. He definitely proved himself. I want to get to a couple more standouts too, man, from both sides of the ball, man. Just from that game, watching that game, there was a couple guys that stood out, especially from that rookie class, man. Another guy that I really liked in addition to Moreland was Cole Holcomb, the linebacker from North Carolina. I mean, three straight 100 tackle seasons. That doesn't happen out of nowhere. And to me, he proved that, man. That guy is around the ball. He was chasing guys down when they got to second levels. You know, I think he had one touchdown saving tackle. And that's another guy, man. From this draft class, we look like we might have a couple defensive studs.
Yeah, man, I agree. And we didn't even get to see all of them. Montez Sweat wasn't out there. And I honestly think he could be in the running for Rookie of the Year or Defensive Rookie of the Year once things get going. That's one player that we did not see that I'm very excited to see. But I agree with you on Cole Holcomb, man. He was very impressive, and I wouldn't be surprised. That's another guy, much like Jimmy Moreland. He might get some starting reps come mid-season, season's end. So definitely that's going to be a name to remember.
Definitely.
One guy that I want to talk about also that stood out to me in a negative way that Coach Gruden had been raving about, and you could say he was a Gruden guy or a Gruden grinder as well, was Samaje Perine. He was not impressive to me, and I know we talked about the makeshift offensive line. I don't think it was very good for any of the running backs in that first game, but Perine just he did bad in pass protection. He didn't do that great running the ball. And I just don't see him making the team, man. Do you think that Perine has a future with this team still?
Man, I'm going to be honest, man. I kind of like Perine just because I like the tenacity he seems to play with. But it's almost like he can never break through that line, man. He can never get to the next level. And it's starting to make me think that maybe Jay Gruden's been hyping him up just to make him trade bait, put him out there in the first game. Hopefully he shined. Hopefully you can get something for him. Because the stable of running backs they have right now, it's starting to, to shape up like he could end up being one of the odd men out when it comes to making the 53. And he didn't really do anything to stand out. Like you said, I mean, on that one play we talked about earlier when Dwayne Haskins called it mass protection and somebody got right through the middle. I mean, Perine was the last line of defense, and he wasn't much of a defense, So it's like he's not having those standout plays that make him a lock for the 53. And when you talk about a guy like Perine who could be on the bubble, he's got to do that. I'm sure he'll get more opportunities. But, yeah, it just wasn't it. It wasn't it in game one. One more guy I'd like to jump to, man, a guy that I've been hot on all offseason to me, it was a very hot and cold game. He had some moments that he flashed brilliance and some other moments where I questioned if he's ready to start. And that's Sean Dion Hamilton. As you know, man, I've been pretty high on SDH, man. And early on in the game, he looked super explosive, bro. Like, I mean, he was hitting through the line in a way he wasn't last year because, as we know, he was coming off an injury when he came from Alabama. And last year, his speed really wasn't there. The explosiveness wasn't there. In the first couple possessions of game one of the preseason, I saw that explosiveness. I mean, this guy was shooting through the offensive line to get to the backfield. And then it seemed like he got more lethargic as the game went on. And I saw him, get lost in translation when it came to guarding a running back out the backfield. The dude caught the ball, and then, SDH missed the tackle and allowed maybe 15, 20 more yards. So that's a guy who I expect to start this year. And, if it was up to me, I would have him and Cole Holcomb starting in middle linebacker and have John Bostic as a security blanket. But it seems like it might be tougher for him, to secure that starting spot, especially with Cole Holcomb breathing down his neck.
Yeah, that's actually a really good thing to point out, man. Cole Holcomb did play really well, and I don't think that the starting middle linebacker jobs are a lock quite yet. I think that's still kind of an open competition as well. But yeah, man, let's jump around the league a little bit, man. Let's talk about the NFC East. Everyone had their preseason games. I think Dallas still hasn't played just yet, but Daniel Jones debuted, and I think he went like 5 for 5 or something. A lot of people raving about Daniel Jones, saying, the Giants did make the right choice, this and that. But one thing I want to say about it, for anyone who's comparing Jones and Haskins, as I'm sure they'll be compared for their entire careers, is keep in mind for this first preseason game, a lot of Daniel, because I watched the Giants game as well, a lot of Daniel Jones's passes were pretty basic, pretty simple, very vanilla. And the Redskins asked Dwayne Haskins to throw it down the field. They asked him to run a pro-style offense and do a lot. That, like you said earlier, it wasn't vanilla on the Redskins' part. But what did you think about Daniel Jones' debut? Do you think it's a bit of an overreaction for Giants fans to feel like they were validated in that pick?
Yeah, I think you brought up a great point, man. You really had two different scenarios when comparing the two. In the case of Daniel Jones, you had a guy whose team wanted to make him look as good as possible. And in the case of Dwayne Haskins, you had a guy whose team was not concerned with having him look as good as possible, more concerned with having him digest as much as possible. So I think you're just looking at two totally different scenarios. I mean, we already know Dave Gettleman's been dragged through the mud because of the Daniel Jones selection, which may or may not be all that bad of a selection, but you knew the Giants were going to do everything they could to showcase Jones's skills, abilities, and talents rather than put him through the learning curve so soon. They already have Eli. They expect Eli to start, and they want to groom Jones, but they also in that first game wanted to prove that they didn't make a mistake. So, yeah, I mean, Jones was throwing quick outs, quick passes, to his first read. He's hitting first read on everything, and, everything was wide open. So, with Dwayne, it was a little more of a thrown into the fire type of situation. It didn't really seem like Daniel Jones was being thrown into the fire. And I think that's the biggest difference between the two. I was not overly impressed with what I saw from Jones, except on the first 4 passes I wasn't super impressed with. But I will say the 5th pass for the touchdown in the corner of the end zone, I think it was to Fowler. But that pass was impressive, man. I'm not gonna lie, that was impressive. He dropped it right in the bucket, right where it needed to be. And no one ever said that Daniel Jones was trash. I mean, at least not us. Like we loved that we got Haskins over him, but yeah, we always thought Daniel Jones was a good quarterback prospect. We just thought Haskins was the better one. And if you're only going to judge off the first preseason games, then sure. I mean, right now you'd have to put Daniel Jones' stock higher than Dwayne Haskins, but plenty of time to go, man. And I think the small things that Haskins showed were, it went a long way for me. I didn't see any escaping the pocket from Daniel Jones. You know what I mean? I didn't see any ropes from Daniel Jones. Balls thrown on the line. But what I did see was a guy who was comfortable in the vanilla offense that they gave him, and that's still something you would like to see preseason game 1.
Yeah, if you look at the stat sheet, you would think, okay, yeah, this is the 6th pick, this is the 15th overall pick. But if you watch, your eyes tell you that Haskins and Jones aren't that far apart, if Jones is even close to Haskins at all. But for me, like you said, I never thought Jones was a bad quarterback. I think people just freaked out because it was a reach to take him at the 6th pick. But for me, it's not when you're drafted, it's where you're drafted. Because look at Tom Brady. When was Tom Brady drafted? The 6th round. Where was he drafted to? The perfect situation. And I think both these quarterbacks are in a great situation. I think it's perfect for Daniel Jones to sit behind Eli Manning. And I think the Redskins have surrounded Dwayne Haskins with enough quarterback coaches and former quarterbacks to really groom him and take their time with it. But while we're talking quarterbacks, let's go ahead and jump over to Philly because I believe Nate Sudfeld, their backup, broke his wrist, and I don't think they have any plans to bring in anyone new quite yet. I think their other backup is Cody Kessler. So my question is, should the Eagles be actively looking for a solid backup? Because we all know Carson Wentz's injury history. So should they just go with Cody Kessler and keep it pushing?
Well, definitely a tough thing for the Eagles, especially considering Carson Wentz's injury history. I've actually got a bet running right now that Nick Foles will throw more touchdowns than Carson Wentz this season, and that's injuries, non included. So if Wentz gets injured and Foles ends up throwing more touchdowns, I still win my bet. And that's just how much that I've seen. That's just how much I've seen from Wentz's injury past, man. I mean, the guy's liable to get hurt, and if you don't have a backup plan, it's just not smart. So I expect the Eagles to be trying to bring somebody in, someone that they're familiar with. But this is exactly what I talked about when they first, decided to go the route that they did with Foles, which was, they didn't have too much of an option. They couldn't pay him that huge number, but at the same time, now we're seeing where they could possibly be without Carson Wentz. And then without another quarterback like Sudfeld, who knows his offense, I wouldn't expect the Eagles to do much at all this season. So, they're probably in a position now where they've got to bring somebody in.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I wouldn't bank on Carson Wentz staying healthy the whole season. And even if you are banking on that, you want someone any team in the NFL needs a solid backup. Like, it's a brutal sport. Look what happened to the Redskins last year. Colt McCoy went down, Alex Smith went down, and we're bringing in guys off the street. So you definitely need a solid backup in the NFL. But let's keep it pushing. Let's go ahead and talk about some questions we got heading into the regular season, man. Because I got a few, and maybe you can help me out with some of these.
Let's get it.
who do you think is going to be the starting punt returner for Washington come the regular season? Because they got a couple guys that can do it. We got Trey Quinn. I didn't see much from Greg Stroman. Was Greg Stroman out there in week 1? I don't remember seeing him. But he could also return punts. But, yeah, man, it's a good question because we haven't really had a solid, sustainable punt returner year in and year out since, like, the Brian Mitchell days. We have guys that are kind of like some flash in the pans for like a year or two, but we haven't had a sustained punt returner in a very long time. So who do you think has a legitimate shot at being our punt returner?
Oh, man, that's a good question. They had Byron Marshall out there preseason game 1, and he's always been decent at it. He's not going to break it to the house, but he'll get you a couple yards. He'll stay in the positives. I wouldn't mind seeing Trey Quinn back there. Jay Gruden had a joke a couple weeks ago that whoever can catch it, that's who he wants back there. And I guess, like, I don't know. If it's up to me, I wouldn't mind giving Moreland a shot at that, man. Because Jimmy Moreland says he's a beast with the ball in his hands, and just about everything he said, he's been willing to back up thus far. So I wouldn't mind giving him a shot. Maybe even one of the running backs, when Bryce Love gets healthy, maybe that could be a position he holds down if he is able to come back this season, which looks like he probably will at some point in the year. So maybe we can find a guy to really hold that position down. Maybe one of the receivers. They really love Terry McLaurin. They held him out the first preseason game except for one snap. Maybe he could man that spot down. I do like what I saw from Kidsey outside of the fumble. He looks like a guy that in the open field can has a little wiggle. And then, man, you know what? Two guys, both of these guys, the one guy's name is Sims, and he's from Kansas. Man, he showed to me. And the other guy that showed big was Roming, too, T.J. Roming out of Duke. He was pretty much Jamison Crowder's predecessor after he left, and he became Duke's, number one wideout. And he was impressive in small spaces. T.J. Roming can really make something happen. So if I had to pick a guy right now, I'd probably go with Roming. And although I don't know if they really gave him a shot, I don't remember him getting a punt return during the game. They probably just wanted him to focus on receiver. But he's the type of shifty guy that I feel like we need back there. A guy that's got a shot to, find a lane and take it to the house.
Yeah, man, punt return is definitely going to be an interesting spot to look at this preseason. And I got another quick question for you, and then you can shoot some at me if you got any. But Jordan Reed. So I think this is big for the regular season. Do you think Jordan? All accounts he's been healthy. He's having one of the best off seasons he's had, possibly the best off season he's had. Do you think he can reach an elite level this season? And how important is it for this team to win games for him to be elite?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question, man, and that's a question that the answer will definitely dictate how far our offense goes. I feel like if you got a healthy Jordan Reed, if you got let's say a 2012 Jordan Reed, then you got a guy that's even a 2015 Jordan Reed. You got a guy that's really ready to change the dynamic of this offense. I think from what we saw in camp, from what I've been hearing, from what I've been reading, it seems like he's back to that level. He was unguardable in camp. Let's just be frank about that, unguardable. And not even by Landon Collins. When I watched Landon Collins go 1-on-1. So it's tough to call to say if he's back, but I do know one thing: if he's back, or if he's just 80% back to being who he was, then this offense has a lot more potential because he's a mismatch nightmare.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. If Jordan Reed can get back to 2012, 2015 Jordan Reed, then this passing game is going to look a lot better because he's definitely our top receiver.
Yeah, so I got one for you though. I got one for you. So we've got three big dogs on the defensive line, and those three guys have admitted to having a friendly competition right now. Who can have the most tackles? Who can have the most sacks? So out of our three big guns on the defensive line, Deron Payne, Matt Ioannidis, and of course Jonathan Allen, who would you pencil in for leading the defensive line in sacks this year?
That is a very tough one. I think Allen won it last year by half a sack, I believe. I think he had 8.5, and Ioannidis had 8 or something like that, and then Payne had about 6. But see, Ioannidis was also hurt and missed a few games last year. So if he's healthy, he probably would have had more than Allen. That is a tough question, man. I like Payne a little bit more than both of them, but he plays nose. It's a little harder to get sacks that way. So I'm going to have to go with Jonathan Allen. I'm going to go with Allen because this is his third season. I know his rookie season he only played about 5 games. But, I mean, obviously everyone's heard his pressers, his one-liners. He's definitely a natural leader, and he's definitely no BS, all about his business. I think he is due for a breakout year. Kind of in the same vein that Ioannidis kind of came out of nowhere. He was undrafted, cut, came back. All of a sudden he's racking up sacks. Jonathan Allen was the first-round pick. He fell in the draft. He was hurt his first rookie season. We drafted Deron Payne, his former teammate. We surrounded him with some more Alabama guys. I feel like he feels like he can naturally be a team leader on this team. And I feel like he is the type of player that knows that it's better to show that than to say that. And I feel like he's going to show it on the field this season. I think Jonathan Allen is going to be a problem. I'm going to go ahead and pencil him in for double-digit sacks. He's going to be competing with Kerrigan and Sweat for team leader, not just leader of those 3 defensive linemen.
Okay, I mean, I would love for it to pan out that way, and I definitely think that John Allen, man, he's clearly the next generation when it comes to leaders on the Redskins, man. This is a guy that's been stepping up all offseason. Like you, I expect big things out of him this year. But I'm going to have to go with Matt Ioannidis. You brought up a great point, man, that Ioannidis was injured for a lot of the time last season, so he didn't get to really have a full shot at that title. But even half of the games he did play in, he played with a ridiculously sized club on his right hand. Like that club he was playing with was ridiculous. And you take that off, man, I think he gets even more sacks. So I'm gonna pencil in Matt Ioannidis to lead the sacks from the defensive side of the ball. I got one more for you too, man. Who starts the season as our starting X and Y receivers? Obviously, we're gonna be going through the position battles, and we'll do shorter videos to just feed the social media following. But right now, man, who do you think starts off as just the X and the Y? We're not going to get into the slot. We're not going to get into the entire lineup, but just the X and the Y receivers, man. Who would you pencil in if you had to pick a number 1 and number 2 right now?
I think it's got to be Richardson and Doxson. I'm not a Doxson guy. Anyone who listens to our pod knows I'm not big on Doxson. I haven't been ever since last season when we first started this podcast. But I think it's got to be those two. I think Richardson brings a different dynamic to the team. He was hurt for every game that he played in last season, and he only played in about 5 or 6, just a handful of games. So I think if he's healthy, I don't even know if we need to see him in the preseason. They should really, treat him like the golden child almost, because I think he's going to make a big difference for this offense. So I think he's definitely going to be starting, and I think it's got to be Doxson. I know they like Terry McLaurin a lot. Gruden has been hyping him up. He said he's better than he even thought he was when they drafted him. So I wouldn't be surprised if he overtakes Doxson's spot. But if you're asking me week 1, I think it's going to be Doxson in there. And I think if Doxson keeps playing the way Doxson has played, that he'll lose his starting spot no question. But I've also heard that Doxson has been on the trade block. So I think you keep Doxson in there. Maybe he has a breakout game, and then you can get something valuable in return for him. This is definitely going to be Doxson's last season, or at least with the Redskins. So I'm not really expecting too much from him, but I think week 1 he will be out there starting. He's looked good in camp.
Yeah. No, he did. He did look good. Camp. Yeah, he definitely did. But this is not to say that he hasn't before. I mean, he's had good camps in the past, And
that's true.
It just has an equal production on the field. But I honestly, man, this might be a little bit of a hot take. Both of these takes I'm about to come with might be a little hot, but I don't see Doxson making the 53. I don't think he's gonna make it. I don't think he's gonna make it to game 1. If they can't trade him, I think they'll just end up having to break ties. And my next hot take is I do not believe Paul Richardson will start. If the coaches have their way, and if they really dictated by how the play has been going this offseason, how it will probably continue to shape out in the preseason games, I think you see Cam Sims and Terry McLaurin as your starting receivers. And I really would not be upset with that. Gruden loves to have one big receiver and one small receiver. That's kind of his thing. So I doubt you'd ever see P. Rich and McLaurin both starting on opposite sides. But I could see a situation where, McLaurin overtakes Paul Richardson and Cam Sims overtakes Doxson, and those are your receivers, and we got 2 young studs.
I think my AC just busted, man. That take was flaming. Yeah, man. I I don't know, man. Those guys just don't have enough experience for me personally. I agree with what you're saying with the one big receiver, one quick receiver, though. That's worked well for Gruden in the past, and I think that's definitely how he wants to go. I mean, even dating back to his days in Cincinnati, he's had A.J. Green as his big receiver, and they normally always had a quick, faster guy, whether it was Sanu or whoever. But I agree with that part of it. So that's part of the reason I don't see it being Terry and P. Rich. But I definitely think they're going to give P. Rich another shot. I think that even has to do a little bit with the fact that you just signed him last season. You know, I think he's still got a little bit of guaranteed money. So I think he's going to get thrown out there to see why we're paying him kind of thing. But, yeah, if he doesn't pan out, man, I think, honestly, by the end of the season, depending on how the season goes, everyone who's starting week one might not, including the quarterback, might not be starting by the end of the season. That goes for the running back, too. Like, I could see Adrian Peterson is going to end up losing touches to Darius Geis at some point. Terry McLaurin's definitely going to be starting over Doxson and probably getting more looks than Richardson at some point during the season. So I think this could be a year of change throughout the season. But, yeah, man, that was definitely a hot take as Cam Sims as a starter week one. I wouldn't be mad at it, though, either, man. I like Cam. He's a great player.
Yeah, definitely. And then on top of that, my bad, man, but I almost forgot about my guy Robert Davis, too, man. He's definitely going to enter the conversation for snaps as receiver this year.
Yeah, the receiver room is getting thick, man. They were all pretty impressive. Kinsey was good other than that fumble, but, yeah, they were all pretty impressive.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so let's go ahead and jump into our greatest Redskins, man. If you guys are familiar with us and you're familiar with this segment, we like to give our greatest Redskins. And what we mean by that isn't necessarily the best Redskin player statistically or historically, but just a Redskin player that means something to us, or like in the way of being a fan. It could have been you met your first Redskin player, or you just remember seeing this person play when you were a child, and it's part of why you love the Redskins. We all love the team, mostly because of the players. The players are what make the team. So we're going to go ahead and jump into this segment. Bryce, who's your greatest Redskin for today?
Well, I'm going to preface it by saying that when Scott McCloughan came here as Skins fans, we were all hyped. And in hindsight, you know, it didn't really pan out, not only with the Skins, but also his draft picks. And when you look back at some of his picks, I'm very unimpressed, you know, compared to what I was when we first brought in Scott McCloughan. But one guy he definitely hit on who was unable to truly flourish and become the player that he could have been was Kaishan Jarrett out of Virginia Tech, man. I'll never forget the first time I saw Kaishan Jarrett get on the field. The first time they got him on the field, he was in the slot, and he came to us as a safety. I remember I'm like, gosh, I thought this guy's a safety. They got him playing slot corner. And that was just, you know, that just showed his versatility, man. You put this guy anywhere, and he was going to perform, and he was going to give it his all. You could have put him at linebacker, man, and he probably would have balled out. Kaishan Jarrett, that was my guy, man. And for all the, you know, the stuff that this organization takes for being, you know, for their gaffes and their miscues and their mistakes, one of the best things they've done in the last couple of years was bringing him back on as a coach on the defensive side, because anybody that played the way he did with the IQ that he played with, because he wasn't the most athletic guy, like anyone that plays with that IQ, they've got a certain knowledge of the game that just can't be taught. And I just really hope the best for Kaishan Jarrett, man. I really hope that he really catches on as a coach, not just in the league, but specifically with the Redskins, because, like I said, a guy with that IQ can be beneficial to young players coming up.
Yes, most definitely, man. And I think that he's in a position to where players will hear his story and they'll definitely want to listen and have respect. And I think he could definitely be an excellent coach. I'm going to go with a fairly new Redskin and a guy who has not even taken one regular season snap, and that is Darius Geis. And the reason I'm going to go with Darius Geis is because this man is A1 off the field. Like, he is just a great all-around person, in my opinion. From the way he's ingratiated himself with his fan base since he's been drafted, from taking fans to the movies to signing extra autographs every day after practice, he has been nothing but dedicated to this team, and he hasn't even gotten a chance to really contribute. He had a tough injury last year. You know, there's a lot of reports out there, if you guys are reading up on the news, how hard that was for him. He had a rough upbringing, but he's made it to the league, and I think he is determined to to be a star in this league, and I think he's definitely going to do that. So one of my greatest Redskins already, even though he's barely even been a Redskin for very long, is definitely Darius Geis, and I am super excited to see what he does this season.
Yeah, no doubt, man, no doubt. Big things coming for Darius Geis, that's for sure, man.
Yeah, man. So that's gonna wrap up the pod for today. But be sure to be on the lookout. We got more coming. You know, Bryce already mentioned we're gonna be doing these position battles. We'll be posting stuff on the Twitter. Make sure you guys are following Gas Sports. All kinds of content on there. Download the app. I believe it's available on all platforms. But yeah, man, Bryce, you want any final thoughts real quick?
Nah, man, just one final thought is, you know, I don't want any of my Skins fans to try to jump off the ledge yet. We've had some amazing preseasons that ended up in terrible regular seasons. So, you know, before we start to panic or, you know, before we start to really have super concern about the team this year, let's just, you know, take a step back and understand that this is not the final product, and most of these guys won't even be playing come game one. So, you know, I'm still optimistic even after that first preseason game.
Oh, yeah, definitely not time to panic, Skins fans. We got a long way to go. Long way to go. So definitely stay here with Help to the Culture, because we'll definitely keep you guys informed and get you guys right.
No doubt. Hail to the culture, baby.
Free world. Yeah. My hitters be moving and shaking to stay out the streets. Yeah. Your hitters be hating, your hitters be looking so weak. Yeah. My hitters be moving and shaking to stay out the streets. Yeah. Your hitters be hating, your hitters be looking so. Snuff the shooter, snuff the looter, snuff the booster, snuff the money mover. Snuff the hater, snuff the player, snuff your hairline, tape up and shape up. Snuff the shooter, snuff the looter, snuff the booster, snuff the